1. We had a family party recently. One of my young relatives, aged 21, came to me with his tale of woe. My story stars Mac and his nemesis, his sister-in-law, whom he calls the Queen. Mac has found college not to his liking and decided he needed time to think. He asked to live with his older brother, who lives on a big chunk of land with the Queen and their 6 kids. The deal was Mac would drive the kids around because they're homeschooled, and the Queen thought it would be easier to have a driver. Well, the driving did not work. You see, the time he forgot to fill the gas tank and decided that he and the 8-year-old should hitch to the gas station got him in trouble with the Queen. She also objected when he decided that picking up the groceries could wait until he was going out the next day. His job got switched. He was to do handyman work and split a bunch of wood instead. As best as I can follow it, here is his list of complaints with the Queen. Everyone has chores, and they are done in pairs. Mac's partner is the 8-year-old. The kid knows his way around a mop, and Mac figures that means there is no need to help. Instead of pitching in, he played games on his phone. The Queen saw this. Mac quickly explained that the kid had not asked for help, and that he was 100% able to do the work solo. The Queen said nothing but called out to the kids doing the laundry. They were not to do Mac's laundry. His bin should be taken back to his room because he was 100% able to do it solo. Another issue that I found amusing: breakfast is their big family meal because it is the one time of day everyone is around. It is served at 7 a.m. Mac finds that too early, so he doesn't get up. For the first few days, he would get up and make his own food. But no, the Queen has now banned him from the kitchen. Instead, a breakfast sandwich and oatmeal are left on the dining table for him each morning. So I asked, "Why are you banned from the kitchen? Is she mad that you won't get up to join them?" No, the Queen said that he did not leave the kitchen in the way he found it. And this is a mean thing to say because she thinks I'm like the maid or something. But the Queen was not done. His job last week was to install a shower in the goat barn. He was repeatedly told to do a good job because people would be using it. It turns out the people using it is him. The Queen had repeatedly told him to leave the bathroom exactly the way he found it. I guess she was not impressed with his efforts. He now has to shower in the goat barn. Well, this is one outrage too many. Mac is in the driveway watching when his brother arrives home that night. He tells Big Brother that his wife is a bitch, that she has the kids trained like robots, she is controlling, blah blah blah. And since he, Mac, is family, the brother must set her straight. After all, he is a guest, not a goat. The brother says, "I hear you. Maybe if you apologize, start pulling your weight, and stop acting like a goat, she'll let you stay, but don't count on it. And if I ever hear you speak ill of my wife again, you can be certain that you will be out within the hour." Mac has come to me because he wants me to intercede and help his brother understand what a demon the Queen is. Or better yet, I understand now. This was his goal in telling me the tale. I can let him live in the cottage in my property. 2. Background. We are a blended family. My grandparents had kids from previous marriages. The uncles and my mom are from my grandmother's side, and my aunts are from my grandfather's side. Growing up, my cousin, Cece, has always been spoiled, entitled, and just quick to anger for no reason. She was the 4th grandkid after myself and my 2 siblings. My siblings and I are adopted. But because she was my grandfather's first bio-grandkid through his daughter, she was spoiled since birth. The girl got the world handed to her by my grandparents, since her mom was basically chasing men instead of being a mom. But because my grandparents gave her the world, she expected everyone else to follow suit. And if you don't, she'd try to put you in your place. If I somehow had something she wanted or had a better version of what she had, She'd cry to my grandparents that it wasn't fair and she deserves it more. When going to their house, my siblings and I would be forced to share everything with her or leave it at home, but she wasn't expected to do the same. If we told her no, she'd throw the biggest tantrum and would convince my grandparents we were being mean and they'd send us home because God doesn't like ugly. As the years went by and her mom and my uncles had more kids, she'd subject the cousins, not her siblings, to the same thing. If the cousins or I decided that we wanted to do sports or join some club that our parents couldn't afford, she'd convince them to pay for only her and her siblings. And then they'd tell us they didn't have the money to pay for anyone else. They didn't even try to make it fair by paying for an activity for one different grandchild each school year. It was always her, and later her siblings. But as soon as she noticed that we'd stop begging to join, like me with cheer, she'd just stop doing that activity, full stop. She'd refuse to go to practice, she'd refuse to participate in school events, but she'd still try to brag about being in the sport, and not us, as if she didn't just waste $400 plus of our grandparents' money each year, just to make us jealous. She did this with everyone and everything, and would get pissed if you told her you didn't care or you weren't interested in that specific activity anymore. She'd poke and poke you just to get a negative reaction, because she'd feed on that, I guess. My grandparents basically raised her and her siblings, but she turned out to be a crybaby who can't take an ounce of criticism because she's never wrong. With an attitude, got into drugs and partying at a young age, and expected everything in life. My grandparents basically justified her behavior, and while that was decades ago, it still hurts. Especially now that they're gone. Most of my cousins hated being around her, and you'd think that she'd outgrow that type of behavior, but entitled kids become entitled adults. And the fact that her mom wasn't present in her life as much doesn't justify it. My adopted dad was very abusive to my mom and us kids, but they kind of turned a blind eye on it until CPS was getting called day in, day out. But CPS in this state is utter trash, so of course they left us there, and of course my mom kept going back to him. I know I probably sound jealous or butthurt about this, and that's because I was and still kind of am, now that I'm thinking about it again. I just don't understand the justification behind favoritism, especially when you have like 6 other grandkids who can clearly see that you're only favoriting one group of grandkids. I have 15 cousins now, some born after their passing, but they weren't all born around the same time, so either do it for the ones who'll appreciate and remember it, or don't do it for any of us. Done ranting and complaining, now on to the reason I was uninvited for my grandparents' memorial by that entitled psycho cousin. Christmas 2022, my grandfather passed away. My grandmother had passed away years before him. While they had blatant favorites, they were all still loved, and they were the glue to our family. They reminded us to keep in contact with our cousins like Cece, because we were all basically little to no contact with her. But they always wanted us to try to come together at their house. They loved having so many grandkids and loved when we all came by to see them. Cece loves our grandfather, even though she was disrespectful most of the time, but again, I digress. I don't doubt her love, but she was just mean to everyone and still is. We had uncles in the area who knew our grandfather wasn't doing well, but refused to help him. Instead, apparently, when he finally went to the hospital, one of my uncles broke into his house and stole my grandmother's ashes, the deed to the house, the life insurance policy, and much more. I say apparently because some of these uncles are saying Cece broke in, and Cece says it was them. They said the uncles and aunts expected him to die while the grandkids hoped for his recovery. I'm Switzerland, basically, and told them they needed to work it out, and since I've been recovering from a major surgery, I decided to ignore their drama and focus on my grandfather's recovery from afar. Sadly, it turns out he was suffering from very, very aggressive cancer that had progressed to his lungs, brain, and going into his bones. Why he wasn't in the hospital before he had gotten so bad, I don't know. I was told he was doing fine until all of a sudden he wasn't. Cece was pissed off at our uncles for breaking into his house. stealing and blaming her minor sister for her grandfather getting so bad. She was living with him apparently, and the uncle said she couldn't have done more to reach out to everyone and let them know of his condition. This is also the same uncle that told me he was checking on my grandfather every week, so how and why he left a minor to care for such a sick adult, I don't know that either. So, I get that this uncle telling people that Cece's sister is at fault is an issue, and I understand why she's angry at them. It's messed up and traumatizing. She's been messaging me what's going on, but I also told her I didn't want to be involved in the drama, that I just want to recover and for her grandfather to be cremated and put in the same urn as our grandmother like he wanted. She understood, until she didn't. Because she has been cussing my uncles out, they decided to ignore her messages, leave her on read on Facebook. She is trying to organize my grandfather's memorial and refused anyone's help with preparations. Won't let us put in pictures with just a specific grandkid, won't let us call the funeral place and check on the process of the service. Nothing, since we're our grandmother's grandkids and not grandfather's real kids. Didn't know this until after the fallout because I told her to let me know what was needed and I'd do my best to help. Her somewhat drug-dealing boyfriend is paying for it, not her, but she acts like she's the queen bee again. Until she asked me to ask one of our uncles for photos of our grandfather to use in a slideshow. My grandfather gave him a photo album with pictures of my uncle's mom, as grandkids, and him. Since he was ignoring her and her siblings and not any other cousins, since we weren't cussing him out, he sent me the photos without issue and not her. I sent them to her, told her to send me these and asked if these were not okay, and if not, I'd ask him to find different ones. She instantly got annoyed, and the following are our message examples. Bro, he's weird. Him and his brother aren't allowed at the memorial, and if they try to come, I'm gonna have the cops escort them off. I mean that very disrespectfully. I'm thinking more happened. Weird how? Why? What'd they do this time? Because I said so. Because of how he's treating me and my sister. Because I'm paying for my grandfather's memorial. And since I'm paying, I don't have to allow anyone I don't want there. Matter of fact, you're technically a part of his family and not my grandfather's family. So you don't have to feel left out on that. You're not welcome either. You're adopted, so he's not even your real grandfather. Only grandfather's family can come and the rest of y'all can enjoy your lives. I'm confused. I meant, was there something new happening other than the stuff that was already going on? Cece blocks me without any kind of clarification, because apparently you're not allowed to ask questions that ask her to clarify something. She is 26 years old and still has a shitty temper. I'm baffled that I got blocked and uninvited for asking 2 simple questions. I've been on pain meds throughout this whole thing, and haven't wanted to deal with her BS either. And of course she drags me into it. The only person I feel sorry for is Cece's sister. If grown men knew he wasn't doing well, they should have stepped up instead of leaving a child to deal with it. I get that people can grieve, but why do you feel the need to take your anger out on grandmother's half of the family? When we were never a grandmother or a grandmother's side of the family, we were always one big family. Since she is mad at the uncles, she's pissed off at all the other kids too by association. The day my grandfather took his last breath, I was on the phone with him. I made my peace through her phone because she unplugged his hospital room phone and told his out-of-state grandkids that they need to stop calling and just make their peace because I'm not plugging the phone in. So she blocked my uncle's kids from saying goodbye. Now she's saying none of them are allowed to the memorial because they have called out her BS. Everyone grieves differently, but this is just evil. The uncles, I will admit, seem shady for things they have said and done, yes, but that doesn't mean she has to take it out on his kids and our grandmother's side of the family. Sorry if this was a mess. My mind is all over the place. I'm hurt. I'm pissed, and I'm just tired of her continuously getting her way with them, even after they're gone. 3. For some background info, my mom, grandma, and aunt has for all my life had really big problems between them, and my mom has had low to no contact with my aunt and grandma. 2 years ago, myself, a 27-year-old female, and my now husband, 31-year-old, were getting married in the spring, in the middle of the pandemic. Because of this, our country had strict restrictions on what was allowed and not when it comes to wedding ceremonies. We decided only to have our parents, because that was the most fair decision due to the restrictions. So we decided to set up a live stream, and everyone thought this was a great replacement, except my grandma and my aunt. 1 week before the wedding, my aunt started messaging me, asking me how many were allowed in the church and why they couldn't come. I told her that because of the restrictions we had to make a choice, and we chose what we think is the most fair choice. And even with the other options, we wouldn't be able to invite my grandparents or aunts and uncles anyway, because siblings would be next in line. She didn't like this answer, but understood it. I thought that was the end of it, but boy, was I wrong. At this time, it was also an outside restriction, so she wanted to know if they could join us outside after the ceremony. We didn't think this was a good idea because we had parents that were high risk, and we didn't feel like it was fair to the other grandparents or siblings. We wouldn't care if we didn't know, but since she told me that they were going to do that, I couldn't say yes to that idea. I told her that I wanted them to respect our choice, and if they showed up, we wouldn't interact with them. I might have been a bit harsh, but it was 1 week before the wedding, and I was stressed out of my mind. And we were going to go visit them after the pictures anyway. She got really aggravated and implied that I was lying, that I didn't want them there, and that we made the choice based on my mother's feelings for them. Which was not true at all. I got really upset and angry, because similar things have happened before. I told them to do whatever the hell they wanted, but if they didn't respect our choice, then I didn't want anything to do with them. We didn't hear anything from them after that. 4 months later, when we visited my grandma, she started getting upset and angry because she, as a grandmother, was entitled to see her only granddaughter get married, and told me I was in the wrong and that I needed to apologize to my aunt. I got really upset and stormed out and cut contact. 6 months later, my grandma decided to apologize and wanted to put all this behind us. Now, 2 years later, my grandma has started to hint to the fact that I took away their opportunity to see me get married, and that I need to apologize to my aunt. 4. My mother is well known to be a Karen, even joking about it herself sometimes. She is usually really sweet, but when it comes to staff or workers, her Karen side comes out full force. I have many stories about her antics, so she is labeled here as a Karen, since she wears the name proudly. Me and my partner are moving out of the house to a new town, so last week I moved back home with my parents for a few days to clean out my old storage room, while my partner went down to the new town for his first day of school. My dad had a seizure the day I moved home, so my mom, our Karen, asked me to help with some general shopping, while my grandmother watched my 4 siblings and took care of my dad. I drove us around town and to a few stores, eventually ending up at a Kmart, think Walmart for us Kiwis, and no food, only general items. She wanted to get some workout gear, so we go in, do our shopping, and head to do checkouts. Here's where things get going. She grabbed the receipt, and I grabbed the items, getting ready to walk out of the store. There have been lots of thefts recently due to the economic climate of my country at the moment. So security will glance at your receipt, see the number of items you have, and let you out. Usually they don't do this to everyone, just shady people, which has gotten the company in hot water because of racism and discrimination. So the company now makes it an effort to check all receipts, which I'm fine with. As we walk out, my mother makes it past the security scanners before the young lady working as a security guard asks to see the receipt. Big mistake. My mother immediately screws up her face and makes more than a few scoffing sounds before exclaiming loudly, "Excuse me, do I look like someone who would shoplift?" At this point, everyone at the tills is looking over, and I feel like melting into a puddle to get away, as I have social anxiety. The poor lady puts her hands up in an "oh no, Karen on the loose" gesture, and politely explains that we need to check everyone's receipts so we aren't discriminating. Mother Karen puffs up and screws her face up more. "But do I look like a shoplifter? All my clothes are labeled, all expensive brands." She then scoffs again, winding up for a whole tirade, waving the little paper that would save me from embarrassment around, all while flapping her lips like a shocked fish. She is slowly turning a lovely shade of tomato red and looks like she's going to burst. Realizing things are going to get much, much worse, I finally pick myself up out of my mental puddle, grab the receipt from her claws and show it to the security guard, who's still attempting to placate the raging she-beast. I hand it over, politely saying, "Here, have a look, is this okay?" While gazing longingly at those sliding doors, as I know salvation from the dirty looks hitting the back of my head is only a few steps away. The poor security guard waves me through, and I grab my mother beast's shoulder to push her out. She relents, moving through and muttering about rights and managers and not doing her job, stamping her feet like a toddler. I look over my shoulder as we walk out, and give the security lady, who looked like she had just been slapped, a little smile and mouthed apology. The last words I hear before the doors to salvation slid shut was the security guard commenting in a small voice, "I only needed to see the receipt. It's my job." I felt horrified. Relief flooded through me as it was over, embarrassment burning at my cheeks as I shepherded the Karen to her car, all while she's still going on about how outrageous this was, and how she feels disgusting and like a vagrant, all because she was asked to show her receipt. Thinking this was over, I hopped in the front seat, hands shaking and eyes tearing up, but no. Karen turns to me, scrunched up her face, and made one more remark. "This only happened because you look homeless. Wear a dress next time." "Thanks, Mom." 5. So my first job was at a Home Depot a few minutes away from me, and I was a guy who pushed the carts back to the front for the customers to reuse. Along with this, I had a walkie-talkie from the cashiers to call me when a customer needed help loading heavy or awkward items. During the summer of the year I started working there, a few months so far, it was an extremely busy week, and I kept getting called to help people. Halfway through my shift one day, I was getting called to help a man at our loading zone. I went up to this man and asked what he needed help with, and he pointed at a large box sitting on one of our flatbed carts for bulky items. The box contained some kind of power tool in it. I don't remember what it was exactly. Something else to note is that this store was severely understaffed while I was there. The man asked me to get someone to drive a forklift to lift it into his truck trailer, which would be very difficult, given how we were so busy and not a lot of employees could drive a forklift at the time. I'd also like to point out that his trailer was full of crap at the time, so the box would not fit in nicely and would need to be strapped down to keep it from falling off. With the store being so busy, I went over to the box to test the weight, and it was actually a lot lighter than it looked. I went up to him and said, "Unfortunately, we are very busy today, so if you waited for a forklift driver, it could take some time to come over. The box doesn't feel that heavy, so we might be able to lift it into the trailer by hand."
"What? So you're okay with endangering the safety of the people around us?"
What?
"Are you willing to risk an injury to save time? What's your name? Where's your manager?"
At this point, I was frozen with a bit of confusion. I was just suggesting we could attempt to lift it in because waiting for a forklift would take a long time. He started getting up close and in my face with a mean look and started raising his voice. After a moment, some other employees came out to see what the problem was. Other vehicles were lining in the loading zone, waiting to get their things and go, so I was starting to feel even more pressure. A few other employees came out and started talking with him, and a few more sort of shielded me and took me inside. One of the employees talking with him went to get a small electrical loading Ballymore and put the box inside. I didn't know how to operate it at the time, so that's why I didn't suggest using them. They lifted it up a few feet, and want to know what they did then? The man and the employee then picked it up and started walking through the pile of crap in the trailer like it was a minefield or something. I was a little peeved at this because just a minute ago, he was berating me for not getting a forklift for him to dump the box straight into the trailer. Now he's suddenly fine about it? He also started having a conversation with the employee and was very chipper about it. After that, he strapped the box down and drove off. and I was left with a very bad headache trying to understand what happened. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, episode 104. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, hit the like button, thank you kindly. Right, let's see, no other business as far as I'm aware, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... This one comes thanks to Donovan. You're gifted a pair of pants, or trousers, and once you put them on, once a day, every time you reach into your pocket, you find a $100 bill. The person who gave you the pants tells you that this will only continue to work until you take them off, then they're just a regular pair of trousers. How long can you wear them until it's just not worth the free money? Now, $100 a day, a little math, in the average year, that would be $36,000 a year if you never take them off. So, I think I could probably manage a year at the absolute most, although I wouldn't be happy about it until that money mounted up in my bank account. Then I would never wear trousers again. Or certainly something more comfortable. Let me know what you think in a comment below. With that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.